No, you know what? I'm not going to make the obvious joke here. Let's just get on with the video. Just let me go and change my underpants first. Hello everybody, welcome to the re-review, the series where I get to replay and reassess games from my favourite gaming era. I'm Brian, also known as UKGN Zoidberg, and I've spent a very large portion of my life playing Amiga games. At one time, I was even a writer, sharing my opinions about those games in the pages of both GamesX and Amiga Action. And now, today, thanks to this series, I'm still sharing those opinions, comparing what critics thought about games at the time of release with what it's like to play them all these years later. Sometimes those games have aged like fine wine, whereas in others, it's made me wonder why I liked them in the first place. In this episode, I'm going to be seeing which side of the fence another game lands on, and that game is the arcade racer Skidmarks, which was developed and published by Acid Software in 1993. Hey, has anybody told you about the VIP memberships that we do right here on the channel? Not only will you get early access to most of the videos that we post, you'll also get exclusive access to full reruns of any live streams that we do, plus exclusive membership content. You'll even get one of these little badges that you can put on your name whenever you comment on anything, just to show people how long you've been a member for. If that sounds like something that might be of interest to you, it's only £1.99 a month, and you can find full details of how you can become a member in the video description, or just click the link on screen right now. You'll even get to help us choose what games we cover in future episodes of both the Re-Review and Retro Game Super Leagues, so why not check it out? For now though, let's get back to the video. I've already spoken about developers from all over the world in this series, but I think this is the first time that I've actually talked about one from the other side of the world. Acid Software were formed in 1990 in Auckland, New Zealand, and they actually shared the same office space as Vision Software, a company who they would work closely with for many years. They were formed by Mark Sibley, who created the versatile game development tool Blitz Basic. Like Amos before it, this was a programming language designed to help those with limited programming knowledge to make commercial quality games. It's not something that I personally have any experience of using, as I learned a long time ago that I know nothing about the making of video games and I should just stick to playing them and talking about them. Blitz Basic has been used to make many great games for the Amiga. Sibley himself made the impressive first-person shooter Gloom, showing off just what was possible. But I think the most famous game that was created using it was probably Team 17's Worms. Acid Software's first release as publisher was actually Vision's platform game Woody's World, developed for the Amiga by Paul Andrews. At the time, he had just made the impressive Defender-like shooter Cybernetics, which was available on a cover disc, although he would go on to make Seek and Destroy, Roadkill and Kiro's Quest. Skidmarks arrived in late 1993 and was developed in Blitz Basic 2 by Andrew Blackburn. The game's name came simply from the fact that tyre marks are left on the road as you race. The game was initially only available through mail order, as Acid Software were still in the process of setting up a distribution deal in the UK. My first experience of playing the game came with a demo that came with issue 30 of Amiga Power. I knew within minutes of playing it, as a massive racing game fan, that I was going to have to order it as soon as possible. It may have only had one track to race on, but I played it for hours on end. In 1994, Acid strengthened their reputation by publishing both Roadkill and Guardian for the CD32. The latter is considered by many people to be the best game ever released for the console. In their last ever Top 100 from 1996, Amiga Power voted it the third best Amiga game of all time. And both games would go on to get A1200 releases just a few months later. Super Skidmarks would arrive in 1995, although according to the game's own menu screen it's called Skidmarks 2. Whatever you call it, this sequel doubled down on everything from the first game. It featured twice the number of tracks, double the number of cars on screen, and many different vehicles to drive, including a cow towing a caravan. And how many other racing games can you say that do that? As well as Amiga and CD32 versions, it was also converted to the Sega Mega Drive with the assistance of Codemasters, and it's that version that's available on an Evercade cartridge today. It featured more trackside detail, but only 6 cars on screen at a time, and no skid marks were left on the track, but otherwise it plays exactly the same. Acid would go on to publish Centre Court Tennis and the Amiga version of Street Racer, before releasing an enhanced version of Super Skidmarks in 1998, featuring even more tracks and vehicles. Their final 3 games were all released for the PC in 2001, including a long-awaited sequel to Guardian called G-Tok, which as far as I'm concerned is well worth seeking out. The Blitz programming language is still being used today, and Mark Sibley is still actively involved in its production. Now let's see how the game reviewed first time out. Reviews for Skidmarks first started to appear around Christmas 1993, firstly in the January issues of both Amiga Format and The One, and then all other magazines following suit a month later. And yes, every single magazine did make the same joke about the game's title. The highest score was 92% from CU Amiga, where reviewer Tony Dillon said, "Skidmarks is to racing games what Kickoff was to football, the start of a new age." He also called it a milestone in Amiga gaming and one of the most playable racing games ever made. Amiga Computing and Amiga Format were also similarly impressed, with scores of 91% and 90% respectively. It's interesting to note that the 3 serious Amiga magazines, the ones that didn't just talk about games, were the ones that scored it the highest, all praising its technical achievements and the fact that it showed off what Blitz Basic was capable of. That's not to say that the other reviews weren't similarly positive. Amiga Action also gave it 90%, saying that it was the best racing game outside of an arcade, and it scored 88% in The One, who claimed that it would have a near limitless lifespan as a multiplayer title. The lowest score was 78% from Amiga Power, who said that although the game was enjoyable, they were going to dock it marks for how much disk accessing there was and the fact that it would crash out at the end of the championship. They did also, however, give it 2% higher if you were playing it on an Amiga A1200. All in all, from 6 reviews, it scored 88.2% on average. Now let's play it again to see what I would score it today. It's time for the playtest. So here we go, pretty bog standard title screen. So you've got a choice of 4 different types of car to race as. Okay, so what you'll find is that the 4 different cars that are in this game aren't really that different from each other in terms of how they actually handle. And the first thing that you can't help but be impressed by with this game is just how well everything moves on screen, with every little bump on the road affecting your car, and it's all incredibly smooth. So that's just a simple match race. The only way to carry on here is to actually press escape, which is a little bit annoying. So the only options that you really get, other than picking which cars you're going to do, you've got different computer teams to race against, although I didn't really see any difference between them, where you can either play championship, practice or single races. So if I select championship, leave the difficulty on rookie, and we'll keep the laps to 4, I'm going to set all of the cars to the same type. And then when it's loading, you get a choice of clicking the left mouse button for the first set of tracks or press fire button on the joystick for the second set. So I'm going to go with the first set. And so you literally just have a series of 4 lap races. Now this is actually the A1200 version that I'm playing here, so the cars do actually look a little bit better than they would do on the regular version. There's more colours on the vehicles. What? No. And unfortunately, pressing the fire button doesn't do anything here. You have to press escape to carry on to the next race. It's very reminiscent of Ivan Ironman Stewart's Super Off-Road in the way that the vehicles react, although this is actually a lot faster and smoother than that one. Although it must also be said that I think that game has a lot more to it, with the on-track pickups and the like. As you can see, the track does also get a little bit messy with all the tyre marks all over it. It is a little bit disappointing that there are invisible walls everywhere, so you can't actually go off into the dirt at the side of the track. And whenever there's a crossroads, you can't you can't accidentally go down the wrong route, which is a good and a bad thing. Now I am playing this on the A500 Mini, and I must admit that the controls don't seem to be as responsive as I would hope. But it's also not a very good game to play on emulators either. I don't feel like the AI on the opponent cars in this actually pay any attention to me whatsoever. They just seem to follow their line, and if I happen to get in their way, then they will just barge me. So, in order to get any success for yourself, then you have to pretty much adopt the same strategy. But it must also be said that beating the opposition cars is not actually particularly difficult either. And I think the difficulty level actually refers to the speed of the game rather than the actual AI. According to the instruction manual, this track was actually designed by Mark Sibley himself as well, because it specifies in the manual that he was responsible for the two-way road on one of the later tracks, and this is that track. And a disappointing aspect of the entire championship mode is that there is no podium at the end. I've won 5 out of the 6 races here, and the championship just continues. There is no end to it. The only way to end and return to the menu is to press escape. So then if you go into practice mode, it is essentially just you on your own racing around the track. Allows you to learn the track and get some pretty decent lap times. The car moves at exactly the same speed and exactly the same handling as the Porsche, despite the fact that it looks like a monster truck. But this is exactly what I did for hours on end when the demo came out on Amiga Power. You had a single track, which I think was this one, and you could just race it over and over again on practice mode. And this is what both me and my friends did. So let's see the end of the practice mode after this lap then. So, alright, let's have a look, see what I've done. My best lap was 10.6. So this is on pro difficulty rather than rookie, and the opposition cars don't seem to be any different. Obviously the best way to play this game is to grab a friend and play it in 2-player, which would be split screen across the middle. And it doesn't lose any of its speed when you do that. Obviously the other way to play this in multiplayer back in 1993 was to grab yourself 2 Amigas, 2 TVs, 4 joysticks and 3 friends, and link the 2 together. I think along with Stunt Car Racer and Knights of the Sky, this was one of the best games for doing that with. But unfortunately the A500 Mini doesn't have online capabilities, so not something that you can replicate easily today. I think the entire game is a little bit rough around the edges with its polish, and some of the physics is a little bit off. But that doesn't detract from how much fun it is to play. But there's no getting around the fact that this game is clearly a multiplayer game first, a single player game second. When you compare it to the game that came after it, this was very much a proof of concept, and then the second game was the one that realised that concept a little bit better. Would have liked a few more modes in this, but because there doesn't seem to be that much to actually do when I'm playing it on my own. But I think it's time to end this playtest and give the final verdict. Perhaps the most surprising thing to me about playing Skidmarks in 2024 is realising just how little game there actually is here. As a single player experience, this is as bare bones as a game can get, with only a practice mode, single races, or a brief championship. You'll have honestly seen everything that the game has to offer in less than half an hour. Playing on my own, I actually got bored quite quickly, as even with the higher difficulty levels, I'd never really lost a race, due to the lack of a challenge. If, however, you're the type of person who likes to continuously lap the same track over and over again, trying to shave milliseconds off your best time, then it's very easy to lose yourself in the practice mode. It's very clear, though, that this is a game that was designed with multiplayer in mind, and thankfully this is where Skidmarks excels. Drag your friends along and it's a fast, smooth, extremely playable racing game. The way that the cars react to the terrain is a joy to behold even after all these years, even if the trackside detail is a little sparse. It's a shame that playing it via link-up today is pretty much a non-starter unless you're prepared to spend a lot of money, but thankfully the split screen mode is more than good enough. When it comes to the overhead racing game Super League, Skidmarks is still easily a recommended title, although it does lose out to its sequel thanks to all the extra content that game offers. If you want to see the full video of that, there should be a link to it on screen now. Ultimately, this is a game that is just as disappointing as it is entertaining. It's easy to see why people, including myself, flipped on it to such a degree when it first came out, but today I can't give it any higher than 7 out of 10. Thank you for watching this re-review of Skidmarks. Whether you agree with me or not, I'd love to hear your memories of playing this game in the comments. Maybe you even used Blitz Basic 2 and can tell me what it was like to use. As always, the opinions expressed in this video are purely my own and not those of the UK Gaming Network team. The next episode in 2 weeks' time will be my Christmas special, where I'll be looking at the video game adaptation of Home Alone and my review of it in Games X. Make sure you come back to check that out. If there are any games that you would like to see me cover in future episodes of this series, then you can email those suggestions to us to reviews@ukgamingnetwork.com. Please remember to give us a like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video, and if you've missed out on any of the previous episodes in this series, then the playlist should be on screen now. I'll also put the playlist for the Retro Game Super Leagues up there for you as well. Until next time, happy retro gaming, bye for now.